I studied a little bit of photography in college. This gal basically was like, there's an opening at my agency in Boston for an assistant project manager and print producer, like overseeing retouching basically. I was there for a couple years working on Wrangler, Writers, Ellison. I was the lead producer on Jack Daniels. It's a lesson in problem solving, right? You're putting together, budgets that are $5,000 to over $1 million. It comes with a lot of pressure. There were many nights that I just was like, what am I doing? I felt like I could do more than just produce. And Bold Brew led me to meeting a lot of great people in the industry and, realizing that I did want to shoot more, for sure. What I've been struggling with for the last few years is the specialist versus generalist. I think my production background makes me such a better photographer, except I'm super annoying to producers where I'm like, well, I think the call time.
You recently got some news.
As of now, I'm 18 weeks pregnant.
This has been another topic. Women coming forward saying, I hid my pregnancy, or I wasn't getting calls when I told people I was having a kid. What's going through your mind right now? Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm so happy to have you here. Today we have Kersten Vasey, who's a commercial and editorial photographer based in Aspen, Colorado. Kersten got her start in advertising in 2010 as a project manager and has worn many, many creative hats since then, more than anybody I've ever met. Senior art producer, creative director, writer, line producer, and what I'm most curious about, cruise ship casino extra numbers. I'm gonna have to hear more about that. Now she's a photographer who works with clients like Ocean Spray, Outside Magazine, Ford Bronco, and American Airlines. So Kersten, I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm excited to be here and meet with you, Julie. Thank you so much. I love what you've been doing and meeting with women in the industry. So it's great to be a part of it.
I think I started probably seeing your name 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half, and started paying attention to your work because it was so good. Seeing you as someone who is, you seem so established and steady in your career, and I think that I know it probably doesn't always feel like that.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to have you on and have a chance to talk and hear about your background, and then you have some exciting news that we'll talk about a little bit later. That I think is a big conversation right now in photography and the creative industry, and it needs to be talked about, even though it's hard. So, thanks for being here. Let's just go right in. I think that you have this amazing library of knowledge and experience from being on the other side of creative in
agency and
world. So just tell me about kind of how you got your start as a project manager and how that sort of evolved leading up to being a photographer.
Yeah, it's a long road, as you said. So I studied a little bit of photography in college. I went to a liberal arts school, so it definitely wasn't an art school by any means, but basically there was a gal in one of my photo classes a year ahead of me, and it was a classic after college, what do I do? I was interested in, I was studying econ, environmental science, and art. So I was kind of all over the place. I was like, do I go to the Peace Corps? Do I go to be a kayak guide in Key West? And then I had always loved photography, and this gal basically was like, there's an opening at my agency in Boston for an assistant project manager and print producer, overseeing retouching basically. And I was in Boston at the time because everyone who went to school in Maine, we trickled down the coast. And I ended up interviewing and getting the job and, kind of staying in Boston, as many NESCAC kids do. I was there for a couple years working on, very Americana brands. It was a very small agency, but Wrangler, Writers, Ella Bean, things in that kind of category. And then I kind of realized after a couple years that it wasn't quite creative enough for me. And then a connection there basically led me into looking at art production, which I ventured into after That agency I went to Arnold Worldwide, which was in Boston. And there I worked Carnival Cruise Line. That's where I had my cruise shoots.
Doesn't get much
Um,
more commercial than that. Yeah.
exactly. Yes.
Can
I
you
was the lead.
give me a little bit of
Mhm.
context around like
Yep.
what is art production? When you say that, like
Yes. Right. It's a very vague. Yes,
yeah.
totally. So it's basically someone that is in charge of figuring out how to execute any sort of art, not just photography, that needs to happen for a client. So whether they're like the creative team is like, we're going to need an illustrator for this project. We're going to need a photographer. I didn't necessarily do much video in the beginning of my career because things were more siloed, I think, in 2010 to 15. At one point, I was the lead producer on Jack Daniels. And so I had to figure out how to like knit ugly sweaters for a Christmas project, make sleighs out of their barrels,
So when you
insane.
say art, it was like
It was
it's
all over
not
the place.
2D, it's not just print media, it's not just broadcast, whatever. It was anything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
CG, like for big car shoots, you're dealing with CG vendors who are putting CGI backgrounds with plates and all
Mhm.
that jazz. It's a lesson in problem solving, right? And I think so much of what I learned, I've been able to, kind of use throughout my career, which is amazing. So yeah,
Mhm.
that's kind of the gist, but it's a lot of like hand holding the creative team, dealing with budget. Like you're putting together, budgets that are, from 5,000 to over $1 million. And it comes with a lot of pressure. And I think overall how it went was people are wanting more for less. So it's the price time quality situation. You can't have
Yeah.
yeah, you can't have them all. So moved into the art production world, and then yeah, really enjoyed it. I was working on great big clients, which was cool. But I think the client that I was most into at that point was New Balance, who was still at Arnold at that point. I was ready to leave Boston and get to the mountains, so I used that career to catapult me to working at Crispin Porter in Boulder. So then eventually I became a senior art producer for them. Until I think 2019. So I was in that world for, I think I was an art producer from 2012 to 19, I guess 7 years or so.
Yeah. I love it. You say like, and had to get out to the mountains. Like, was that I think a lot of people from the East in general, Southeast, whatever, Midwest, have that same thought. Was that something that was always in the back of your mind? I don't know New England super well, but Maine is like wild, beautiful, and then
Right.
Boston less so. But were you always did you always have that drive to go out west?
I didn't know exactly where out west. It was sort of like I stayed in Boston for as long as I did because I had so many good friends there.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't, it's hard to leave best friends,
And you were probably
And
in your like 20s,
yeah,
mid late
right.
20s.
Yeah. So I was in my 20s living all together. You're still like loving the roommate life. I mean, Boston eventually wasn't that super inspiring for me. I didn't have a car. I was sort of depending on them to drive, to occasionally go ski. Like if I got 10 days in a year, I was psyched. And then it's kind of funny. Like I had always kind of wanted to move either to California or, Seattle or Colorado. And I reconnected with my now husband, in 2015. It was kind of a weird, like, kismet situation. I was already ready to leave Boston. I got hit up. We basically, reconnected over Scorpion Bowls and karaoke in Boston. He was living in Colorado. I got hit up by a recruiter like a week later at a big tech, for basically an art producer role in tech in the Bay Area. I was like, okay, this seems like a good like reason to move. And then I ended up not getting that role, but applied to a bunch of places in Colorado. I ended up moving to Boulder, and it worked out that I found my person and kind of like found my way into working in the outdoor industry then. So it was like everything sort of aligned magically. It was kind
Yeah.
of crazy.
But that's how life
Yeah,
happens, especially when you look back on it. You're like, oh, yeah, that was meant to happen. Like all the stars.
totally.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's pretty wild. Yeah.
Okay, so you're in Boulder. You've got this like Crispin Porter, super well
Mhm.
known. Are they a creative agency or like an ad agency specifically? They're like
I
advert.
mean, they're known as an ad agency for
Yeah,
sure. They do it all. I mean,
yeah.
I think at their height, they had a ton of offices. Boulder was always the the main campus or whatever. During my tenure there, they certainly got smaller over time. And you could sort of see, I mean, even the beginning of that shift from like big agency to smaller shops to, smaller budgets and all that stuff. I mean, there are a lot of reasons why I wanted to leave eventually. I was there for three and a half years. But yeah, working on some amazing clients like Infinity Cars and Goose Island and Fruit of the Loom and, it was another huge agency basically, getting a lot more experience. There were many nights that I just was like, what am I doing? And I'm like wondering like how I'm going to do this underwear shoot for like, like how am I supposed to get, just like, you're just like crying over the most insane things and you just like reality check doesn't matter.
Totally. So then
Yes.
when you were at Crispin Porter 3.5 years, and then is that when you went into freelance photography?
I also have to thank my husband for sort of getting me back into photography because I didn't take any photos when I lived in Boston, even after studying photo. And then when I moved to Colorado, it's so much about where you're, what you're surrounded by. If you're not inspired, like, it's like, that part of me was just like not alive kind of. I started doing more and more outdoor activities and, got more into photo again. And he was an ambassador for Topo Designs like already. And then he sort of like led me into working with them a little bit. And then I started also shooting kind of as a volunteer for Outdoor Women's Alliance. And so that's how I met a ton of women like in the outdoor industry and just kind of like volunteering my time and, writing for them and going to OR and writing for them there and taking.
When you were volunteering and things like that, were you working full time at Crispin Porter?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I needed to have an outlet for, outside of, agency life.
And was that just like a creative outlet at the time because you obviously had a background for it and no like desire to turn into a career, or was it like kind of like maybe?
I would say I was like sowing those seeds. I was definitely interested in getting out eventually. Right, exactly. Yeah, and I'd be requesting time off to go to OR or whatever. And like luckily I had a great boss who was like into me doing that sort of. She's like, "What are you doing again this weekend?" Like, she was always into asking me about my weird adventures, but yeah, so that's how I kind of like parlayed into, meeting a lot of people and sort of, and then eventually working at this tiny shop called Boulder in Durango, where I was, the creative director, but it was like not a creative director in the typical agency sense. It was just that I was doing literally every type of creative you can imagine, from, coming up with campaigns to, copywriting to writing press releases to photographing to producing to all of the things.
Yeah.
So it went from like being this like niche role to like doing everything, which was kind of exactly what I needed after. I felt like I could do more than just produce, and Bold Brew like led me to meeting a lot of great people in the industry and, realizing that I did want to shoot more for sure. So I was there for like a couple years until, fall of COVID when everything was changing and, eventually went freelance during that time.
Was that 2020?
It was fall of 2020. It was like, it was basically like, I was a little bit forced to go full-time freelance, but I think I can get, like a lot of people, get kind of complacent where you're like, yeah, this is fine, like whatever. And then it was like, oh shit, like I don't have any hours, so I guess I need to figure out what to do. And basically, again, the stars kind of aligned, and I had all of a sudden like one of my good friends who was a photographer was like, I need a, assistant on this big shoot. Like, can you come help me? And then I had another client be like, I know you kind of do web design and like, great, can you like do this for me? So it was all of a sudden I had these jobs lined up when I was freelance, and I was like, oh, this can work. And it was a great move for me, and I'm glad that COVID kind of forced me into doing that full time. So
it's amazing how again, COVID, when it was happening, rough, awful, still awful,
terrible,
kind of forces your hand for certain things in your life of like, how's your living situation, your relationship, and your job, and are those things pandemic proof? Your mental health, all these things. It's like a reality check.
Last year was the first year that I was like full time. Like I need to turn down production roles because I kind of realized that my heart wasn't in producing. Like, I know I'm still good at it. It's just, and it is hard because last year was, it was a slower year for I think a lot of people,
Hmm.
including me. And I don't know. I just wish I could be shooting this, and it's just, and you don't want to be necessarily on set where you're just like, oh, like this is how I would do it, or this,
Yeah.
and
That like builds
production can,
weird resentment that you don't.
yeah, exactly. And like, and you don't want that. I mean, I think I certainly am not opposed to producing like passion like I'll still put my own
Yes.
tests together and if it's like important to me, or if it's say I got involved in like a film project that was super cool, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'll jump on that. But just with commercial roles, I was in a good place where I could start turning stuff down. Also, it's just like we only have so much time and energy. It's like I'm not a person that likes, I don't
Yeah.
want to work every day. That's why I'm freelance.
Yeah.
Like,
Totally.
so
Totally.
it's like I need to concentrate on trying to get photo clients to just like see where that leads me, because as have mentioned to you, I'm very lucky in that, I live in Carbondale now. My husband is a teacher at a boarding school, so I live for free. So it's like I have the biggest padding in the world now. And
Most people would not. They'd be like, my husband's a teacher, so I have to work too.
no,
It's like,
exactly. I know.
but
Right, exactly. So, but right now, I mean, like cost of living, like, and I can eat at the dining hall,
yeah,
which
and
like,
you're also in like one of the most beautiful, stunning outdoor adventure locations out there.
right, yes, exactly. So all the things are aligned for me to it being okay when I do have slow periods. Like I'm very blessed that I have that kind of padding, and I think,
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't, and I think could be I could be full time still producing because if I didn't have that, and a
Yeah.
lot of people don't have that option.
You're not necessarily taking on jobs in this like desperate fashion because you have a little bit of a safety net with your living
Yeah.
situation. Where for you is the line of like, do you have like a number of, in your bank account where you're like,
Hmm.
oh, I don't need to take on roles that I don't really want? Like, I'm just trying to kind of get inside your head and say, like,
Yeah.
producer role comes to you because I think that I know this is true for me, and I think it's probably true for a lot of photographers where you kind of these days have to have other skills. Like, you kind of need to be able to do some film or motion. You
I
need
know.
to have like your whole experience bringing that to the job, to everything you get hired for. We're also kind of seeing this like we have to be a lot of other things, but when you're a lot of other things, you maybe don't do the one thing that you really want to do super well.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's kind of like a catch 22. You really need to have a lot of skills and be multi-talented. But
Right.
if you're getting called to produce jobs, then maybe you're not shooting as much. So I'm just curious where that line is for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly like what I've been struggling with for the last few years. It's like the specialist versus generalist. I've talked to like several people and they're like, well, you don't really look as serious as a photographer if you are doing other things. It's interesting because I think my production background is like makes me such a better photographer,
Yeah,
but
I
I
can
do.
imagine how valuable you'd be as a photographer. You're like, I know how all of this works, okay? So don't come to me.
Yeah, exactly. Except I'm super annoying to producers where I'm like, well,
Oh,
I think the call time. Yeah, maybe that's annoying. I try not to like, yeah, overstep there,
yeah,
but
don't go deep in that. Don't go deep.
yeah, exactly. No, that's interesting. I think, well, I think back about like some jobs that I turned down, like budgets have just been so squeezed, and maybe it's me, but maybe it just seems like there are certain jobs that I turned down like even a year ago that I was like, oh, I would take that now just because it has been slower. I just feel like budgets are weird. This market is so competitive, so competitive. I still feel like I know you say like you seem like you have such a stable career, and I'm like, and there are literally
Don't we
months where I'm
all
not.
on Instagram? Like we all
Exactly. I mean,
have
I
Instagram.
think everyone feels that way, right? Where it's like on the outside, everyone's like, "Oh my God, everyone else is working all the time, and like I'm not doing anything." It's been really hard because there's times where I haven't worked all month, and I'm like, "What the hell am I doing? Like, am I really like doing the right thing?
Yeah.
Is there something that I'm doing wrong?" So that's when I've been like, I need to shoot some personal stuff or passion projects and figure out like maybe do a portfolio review to figure out like what maybe isn't quite right, I guess,
Yeah.
right now. I do have definitely like day rates there. I'm like, I'm not going to work underneath that.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not like a bank account number, it's more like I'm not going to try and fuck the entire industry by accepting this like low rate
Yeah.
because it's unfair. Like,
Right. Right.
so of course, like maybe there will be a point where I need to look at my bank account number, but right now it's more like I just take it job by job and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
does this feel fair? Like someone else is gonna accept this because that's just how it is, but
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't feel right for me to accept something if it's, if I'm not making X amount
Yeah.
of money for it with
Yeah.
that usage or whatever. Because I've had so much experience, budgeting
Mm-hmm.
and knowing how much things actually can cost,
Yeah.
that's helped me too.
Yeah,
And I
totally.
think that's where a lot of entry level photographers can get really like freaked out and, not really know who to ask, and that's where I think like the resources like a photo editor and Wonderful Machine like coming out with, this is how we broke down the budget, the estimate
Right.
for this job. And it's like, whoa.
This podcast is like my effort to sort of elevate the conversations and provide platforms for photographers and creative people. Talking about sort of removing gatekeeping from photography. And photography is kind of one of those things where before cameras became so readily available, it was like you had a mentor, or there was an apprenticeship, or maybe you went to school. Now the access to like photography and stuff and the tech is there. I mean, I went to school for it and you went to school for it. Like, how many classes did you take? Maybe you took some actually. How many classes did you take about like the industry or running a business
Oh, none.
or freelancing
None.
or pitching or like the actual skills that you need? I mean, like personally, I have your experience, but in the editorial world, like coming up.
Right.
So my understanding of editorial photography, like I bring that to my photography. But then when I'm learning, I'm trying to get more into the commercial world. Well, and then I'm trying to learn about licensing and usage rights. I'm like, oh, that's a thing. And I remember reading about it and being like, I don't really know what this is. And then reading more about it and being like, oh, well, that I know the concept of it, but I was too ashamed to like say anything. And so want to have more conversations about things like that. And a photo editor, great resource. Wonderful Machine, you mentioned, another great resource. They also have paid, I think you can just pay them to, and other people too, to help you
Right.
produce. What would you say to newer photographers who are, maybe just give some like starting points?
We just talked about, having those resources out there in the open on social is like so, so helpful. They kind of came around, what, in 2020 is when I
Yeah,
mean, photo editor has been around for a long time,
but he only used
but
to share the print promos.
yeah, exactly. And he hasn't shared, budgets or like how much are people are making for what the last maybe year or two. And like Wonderful Machine, I don't know when they started sharing budgets. So I don't think it's been that long.
Yeah, it's
I
probably
think
less than a year that this stuff has started really coming out.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then another good resource, they don't post as much now, but Fuck Gatekeeping, I
Mm-hmm.
think kind of came out of three great photographers started that I think in 2020, and they did a great job of putting information out there. But I do think it speaks to the power of like having a mentor and someone who you feel comfortable going to ask them like, does this feel like in line with what you're seeing, or it's just someone that's a little bit ahead in their career,
Totally.
um, to sort of give you advice there, because I do think that's a huge benefit. And, if you don't have those people, I think like looking at people that you respect online and sort of like figuring out, it's so dependent on who it is. But like
Right.
every time someone's reached out to me, I felt very like, if I have time, especially, like I feel very like lucky that someone looked at my work and said,
Yeah.
I want to reach
It's
out to
so
this person
flattering.
because it's very flattering.
Very
And
flattering.
yeah, and like I have always been, willing to talk to younger photographers and just say like and help them put a budget together and just think, "Oh, have you thought about styling? Have you thought about
Mm-hmm.
permitting? Have you thought about all these things?" And they're like, "Oh, not really." Like anyway, so I do think it's not every photographer is going to do that for you, but that's just really nice to know that someone, can answer those questions for
Right.
you.
Right.
And I think in general, more people are willing to do that than you think, maybe.
Totally. 100%.
There will always be assholes, but
Yeah, well, and the worst someone can do is say no.
Yeah,
Like, hey,
exactly.
can you help me? Like, I'm really psyched up for whatever. Like, if someone said, or well, the worst thing somebody can do is not respond.
Yeah,
The worst thing they
right.
can do is say no. But yeah, I think that's a
Yeah.
good point. I've been hearing that a lot, like thinking about everybody's on their own photographer journey, being a professional, your sort of career path. No matter where you are, there's people a couple steps ahead and a couple steps behind, and you're looking up to the people a couple steps ahead to say, what are you doing? And the people behind you are looking to you and saying, well, what are they doing? And so it's all this like evolution and learning process. What we're seeing right now with some of these resources and conversations happening is like trying to, make that, much more public and readily available, because it'll help everybody in the industry, right?
Yeah, 100%.
On that note, kind of sensitive subjects, you recently got some news. I don't know if you
Yep.
want to share that.
Yes, I am, as of now, I'm like 18 weeks pregnant. So,
Yay!
yeah. You
So,
can't see my burgeoning belly happening
no,
right now,
no,
but
it's conveniently cropped out.
yeah,
But
exactly.
this has been another topic, women coming forward saying, from all, I think, multiple ages and sort of generations saying, oh, I hid my pregnancy, or I wasn't getting calls when I told people I was having a kid, and things like that. And again, we're talking about these things, which is awesome. First step. It's obviously still prevalent, and women are experiencing this major challenge with being pregnant. So, what's going through your mind right now? Like, you're at a very special time. You just
Yeah,
found out. I guess you're probably hormonal. Like,
yeah, yeah.
what did that bring up for you in the midst of a lot of conversation around pregnancy?
Yeah, I mean, it's the endless like battle for, pregnant people to decide who, if they should even tell people, who they should tell in the industry, like if they need to keep it fully a secret, is it okay to show up to set like literally 36 weeks pregnant, or am I being dishonest, or
Yeah.
it's so hard to navigate. And I think, and that's another thing about, having a community around you and asking what
Mhm.
other people did. But for me, I have been really fortunate that I've worked with, I think like almost all of the producers I've worked with, or, clients I've worked with have been moms or people that have had kids and
Yeah.
understand those challenges. Cause I don't know, I would feel a little weird about showing up to set just like fully I don't know, but everyone is different, it's, and because I do know, I've had people that have told me, I was supposed to shoot this, I told them I was pregnant and then they ghosted me, or I, like have gotten terrible feedback because I didn't tell people and then I showed up to work pregnant. Granted, no change in productivity or anything,
Mhm.
it's really frustrating because I think as women we do have, a lot of difficulty getting jobs, especially in the outdoor industry,
Mhm.
yeah, it's hard because I'm like want to reach out to people and be like, I'm pregnant, like hire me now because I
Yeah.
can't work like a little later.
You're like, they're limited time
Yeah,
only. Like,
I know exactly. Flash sale.
going out of business.
Everything must go.
Everything's
Um, it's so weird. But anyway, so I have started telling people just because it's always on a case by case basis, but that I am pregnant. Just want to let you know, like I was bidding for, an international shoot.
hmm
It didn't work out in my favor, but just
And
wanted
so
to let her know. And she's
you
like,
told them during the pitching process?
yeah,
Okay.
during the bidding, and I felt comfortable with it because the creative director slash producer was like, has been around. She's had, yeah, she's had kids. Yeah, I mean, I just felt like that was the right call, and I think everyone just has to kind of figure out what they think is best for themselves. I think there's definitely been challenging shoot days. I haven't had like a ton of like really long shoot days. I've done shorter stuff, but I'm skiing down, steep runs with my camera bag and exhausted, and I just threw up, and then I'm gonna go throw up some more.
Sounds like a normal day. Like,
Yeah, exactly. But it's awesome because like I've had good friends that I'm shooting, that I'm photographing, and they're like, please let us carry your camera bag, like
right.
I don't know. And it's been nice because I'm like, oh, I love working with these awesome women. Like, I just photographed Bhutan Fest, which I don't know if you know it, but
I
it's an
only know
all,
it from your photos.
yeah. So my photos, yeah, it's been around for 3 to 4 years. And, it's now, it's the biggest women and femmes like ski and snowboard gathering basically 800 people at Sunlight like last weekend, and it was so cool. And
I think you need to also specify that it's like a nudist, not a nude. Is it just naked or is it a nudist?
no, so it just ends
Like
it.
typically the
So I think, yeah, that's the hard thing about it is they're trying to figure out how to, like, because that was the first time they held it on public land, on Forest Service land,
Oh.
who didn't really want to talk about the nude lap. It's basically just the culmination of the event is the nude lap. It's not like all day or anything. It's
Oh,
just
okay.
like, so basically it was an all day event with like amazing vendors, artists, you're all skiing all day.
Mhm.
And then it used to be at Bluebird, which was this like resort, or it was a private thing that it could be shut down, but Sunlight basically it had to move to Sunlight because Bluebird closed. But anyway, like basically it was an all day thing, and then once the lift stopped running for the public, then everyone went up or skinned and then did the lap at like 5 p.m. or
Mm.
something. So yeah, I would say the content that goes out leans heavily naked, but, but it's mostly not naked.
I have
Although,
to ask, are you naked when you're taking the pictures?
yes,
Yeah.
I was pregnant naked in a blizzard with my two cameras just
I would love that. Like the lady with the long hair and like covers her boobs, but it's like your cameras.
exactly. Yeah, and I have one of the yeah with her her cameras too. That was an amazing moment because I was like, this is hilarious. And then last year, it was it was blizzarding this year. Last year was Bluebird. It was like 55 degrees. I think I was naked shooting for like 4 hours, and I got the worst sunburn of my life. Yeah, so it's always a funny time.
I just
But
think
it's
about all the weird positions. I know ski photography is different, but I get like I shot the last couple of days and I was like just lying on the floor, like legs up, like trying to like doing like a boat pose, trying to get the image.
yeah.
And
I didn't do any super weird positions this time because I was like, it was so cold and like it was it was very basic shooting. I'm like, whatever I got is good. But last year when I was more freeing because it was so warm, I think I had like ice burns on my butt, like
that's hilarious.
I know.
Oh my
So
god.
we can do things pregnant. It's not like we can't, like I'm not dead.
Do you have like so it sounds like where you're at right now, you're case by case basis,
Yeah.
whether you're gonna tell, clients, potential clients, if you're pregnant or not. Do you have a sort of thought about what that might look like for you postpartum?
Colorado just recently signed into law the family leave plan, which is basically like 12 weeks paid for freelancers and full-time employees, which is amazing. So the really nice thing is that my husband gets 12 weeks as well, which we weren't sure about. Like the school did not have a good leave policy until this came into being. So it's perfect timing because I also get that time, but I'd love to say I can take it. I don't know. I think I just have to play it by ear to see, if I'm C-section or if I'm not and how it goes. You just have to be flexible, and I think my ideal would be maybe sticking. I think I'm doing September, so if I took the rest of the year off and then started shooting again in January, that could be a good target. However, like I have gotten hit up to shoot like already getting hit up about like these huge income making productions that are shooting, in September and October. And I'm like, is there a world in which I could make that happen? I don't know.
What's your due date?
September 9th.
Okay.
I have heard about people going back to work like immediately. Some have severely regretted it. Some have, I just have to pay the bills. I think again, like I said, the case by case basis and just seeing what feels right. And if it's the right client, I just have to think about it from their end. Like I need to have a backup, especially if it's a big shoot that's long. You can't just have this one person on hold, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So whether I bring on an assistant that's incredible, that's could even step in
Mm-hmm.
any case, or just at least like maybe carry a little bit more of the burden of carrying, helping with things and, that kind of thing. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's definitely a fear of mine is just completely not working for a long time and my career completely going bye bye for a while, especially when I feel like it's still a little bit tenuous with, transitioning from other things to just full-time photo. From what I've talked about, people say that it does take a few years to kind of get back into the swing of things. And my husband's job is super, super inflexible because he's a teacher, and a lot will depend on, it's again, like it's the unpaid labor of parents and,
Right.
Figuring out if I can afford childcare. It's always like, am I making more than my childcare costs? Like, that is all of those things that you have to think about. It's a long answer. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, it's long because
That's how it is.
yeah.
Right.
What about just kind of thinking, uh, you know, all the stories that I've seen I are negative as far as like women coming out and saying I had a bad experience. And we know the statistics, like the psychological statistics of people leaving negative comments or negative reviews versus positive ones. Like if you have a good experience, you're less likely to leave a review or a comment unless,
Got it. Right.
compared
Right.
to having a bad experience. So, in a lot of these posts and comment sections and stuff, it's like, seeing women treated a certain way because they're pregnant. Have you heard many stories of femme photographers like coming back after having a kid and doing well, like being happy, like getting more jobs because they have a kid, or
Ooh, I don't.
like success stories out there? Like there have to be. We
I
know
know.
women, really successful women photographers
Yeah.
who are mothers. I just haven't heard those stories. I guess that's really what I want, is like to hear what the good stories are and how
No, I know.
they approached it. Like where can we build some type of roadmap for people, freelance creatives that are going through this? Like it's half the freelance creatives out there. So,
No, I know.
and
And right, and men, and fathers and other,
mhm,
obviously matter too. But yeah, I mean, the gist is that the bulk of the work will fall on the generally, as heteronormative, but the mother.
mhm,
And it's sad, like I haven't heard a lot of like super positive stories, I think, but also I think, um, your priorities kind of shift a little bit. Everyone is like, you can only plan so far. Like you
yeah,
cannot figure out how you're going to feel afterwards. It's just a whole different experience. And a lot of people I have talked to is like, I don't care like if I didn't, it's that comes from a privileged place, but I don't care if I'm not working right now. Like
mhm,
I am enjoying this time with my
right,
child, and it just because your priorities shift. And I think you probably, I don't know, it's it's really hard because I really haven't, like a lot of my friends are extremely excited to just be mothers, and my friends that are photographers,
mhm,
and talking about how fun it is and how amazing it is, but it's also how hard it is. And it does take time to figure it out. Like it's a whole new thing.
yeah,
And the people who have flexible partners, who have a lot of money, who have, will always have an easier time kind of going back into the workforce. But in general, I have a lot of women that I've know that are moms and make it work. And I think people
mhm,
will make it work if they want to make it work. And I'm lucky in that my mom and stepdad just retired, and they're like, if you have a longer shoot, like, we can always
give us
come
the
out.
baby.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Can come with me on production, or, even my husband could if he's still on paternity leave. I think there's all these options you just have to figure out if that hassle is worth it. Faith Briggs, the director, she's a great person to follow if you're in the photo realm or film realm, looking to have a child and how to make that work. Because I can't remember who she traveled with, but she took her baby on production. Everyone was psyched to see
Yeah,
to have the baby
yeah,
there.
for
And,
sure.
she's pumping, you're doing all of these things. And I'm like, man, could I figure out how to make that work?
Right.
And that's when I'm like, oh, I want to be surrounded by people on set who understand. And,
Mhm,
I would feel more comfortable working with with women who have dealt with it or who understand it, and not to say there's not men that understand it, but it's just, and people, right? It's a case by case basis of like, do I want to go into a new client, new crew with pumping and dealing with a baby? And, so yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. A lot to think about.
She's postpartum and she took the baby. What's her experience? And also, this is going to go on YouTube, or this is going to live on YouTube. So if you're listening or watching and you have had or know someone who's had a positive experience being pregnant, having a baby, being freelance photographer, filmmaker, freelance creative, please leave the story in the comments so that we can all feel uplifted and know that there's a bright future. But there's no doubt a bright future for you regardless, because your work is stunning and your experience is amazing. And you're not leaving us quite yet. I'm going to ask 5 rapid fire questions and then we'll go to the slideshow. So, introvert or extrovert?
Introvert.
What's one piece of media that you recommend to people all the time?
One podcast I'm obsessed with that I haven't listened to in a while actually is Heavyweight. The host, he helps people solve like mysteries from their past. Some are super funny and some are incredibly sad and moving, and it's a super, super great podcast.
Okay, this one's fill in the blank. Taylor Swift is...
iconic, I would say, but not for me.
One thing people don't know about you that might surprise them.
I had a radio show in college, which is hilarious, but I hated to talk on the radio.
What song do you listen to on repeat?
I love dance music, like funk. Parcels is like up there. Anything by Parcels, I'm obsessed with.
Okay, Parcels, great. We got to the rapid fire answer.
Not rapid at all.
Kirsten isn't leaving us just yet. Stay tuned for the next video where she's going to do a slideshow presentation of some of her favorite images. We're going to chat about them. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe for more photographer interviews and slideshows, and we will see you soon.
It's a bog, 4 ocean spray. Definitely my biggest scope. I love it because I am drawn to more minimal looks. I just wanted a pure field of cranberries. So this was my first editorial shoot for Runner's World. She's a Paralympian, world champion sprinter. I ended up going down to Austin to shoot with her. I have to shout out to my husband. I was shooting on the ground while he was drone opping for me. We kind of talked about shots that I wanted to get, wanted the graphic lines. This is from a horse packing personal project I did. Her family's very ranch oriented. This was one afternoon where I was kind of wandering around. This one's for Outer Range 2. Actually just won an award. This was at the end of a shoot. We were shooting a lifestyle scenario. So this is a film photo that ended up working out super well.
Cool. Sounds like we're gonna see some really exciting things from you.